Let me thank everyone for coming, and let me first thank the members of the Hope Coalition and people who've been working on this issue for many, many years. Thank Senator Shaw and Senator Kennard and all of the other representatives and senators who are here this morning on this very, very important issue that the North Carolina NAACP is fully behind. I want to frame my comments a little bit broader and dig a little bit deeper in why this is the right time for this to happen. 50 years ago, in 1959, there were no black representatives in this legislature, and only 3 women, the first one coming in the 1920s. The civil rights movement to end gender was poised to dismantle many laws and customs that were accepted patterns in North Carolina. This was an all-white legislature, and it was determined to hold back the movement. And it was in that context that it passed a draconian anti-labor, anti-civil rights law called General Statute 9598, making it illegal for people to talk across the table about working conditions in any public jobs. Now remember, at that time, public employment as garbage collectors, cooks, housekeepers, groundskeepers, and other meal work were among the best jobs that my grandparents could get. 40 years ago, in 1968, Martin Luther King Jr. flew to Memphis twice to help garbage collectors who were striking to gain collective bargaining rights with the city of Memphis, and because Memphis had no organized process for its public employees to unionize. And here we are, 50 years later, as the worst economic crisis in our lifetime deepens. The governor and many of our friends in the legislature are focused on their 2 constitutional duties. First, to provide necessary state and local government services to our people, and second, to find the funds to pay for these services. But let's step back a minute from examining our state's money ledgers and ask this question: who provides the services? Police and fire services, and emergency ambulance services, and teachers and mental health workers and nurses, the buildings, and who maintains the roads and staff our prisons. These are living people like you and me. They have families, they have mortgages, and many of them are only a paycheck away from poverty. And these dedicated public servants are the glue that hold our community together. Now, who knows better than them how to maintain and improve employee morale during a time of more demand for government service than the dedicated people who do all the time? I would ask Governor Perdue and Senate President Bass Knight and House Leader Hackney and all the members of this great body, doesn't it make good sense to sit down across the table from our public servants and get their ideas about how to get the most out of every tax dollar we spend? Doesn't it make sense to get their input about how to spread any sacrifice around so that it does not fall unfairly on these? I would say the county commissioners, members of the legal municipality who have fought this particular issue. Doesn't it make sense to listen to the folk you can find when you get ready to get elected? Thousands who hold public jobs are in jeopardy of layoffs. Their families are already being hounded by bill collectors and mortgage companies. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, official unemployment in North Carolina was 9.7, February 2009. The data for black and white unemployment rates in North Carolina for last month are not yet available, but we know what the national figures are: 8.2 for white workers, 13.8 for black workers. And since North Carolina was about 2 percentage points worse than the national average, we know that more than 1 out of 7 black workers is out of work now, and the number is rising. We know that when people lose jobs or can't find work, they turn on themselves, their families. Suicides increase, clinical depression, domestic violence increase. But there is a light of hope. If state and local government workers had the same rights as private workers to sit across the table from agency managers and jointly address this crisis as reasonable people, we believe resulting collective thinking about how to reduce costs would be fair. If reasonable people discuss the common problem, we believe they will figure out how to spread the pain evenly. If our dedicated public servants are consulted with respect, we believe there will be hundreds of creative ideas for improving efficiency. In short, if we would repeal Jim Crow 95-98, and North Carolina must understand that, do we still want a Jim Crow law on our books 50 years later? But if we would repeal it and repeal the disrespect that it shows for the ideas and of our public workforce, we believe we could engage in the vast army of public employees in a massive reconstruction effort to get North Carolina moving again. This is a reform that costs pennies to implement. 48 other states encourage their employees to be involved. 40 other states have learned that more involved employees mean fewer grievances and fewer problems. The more respect they show for their public employees, the higher their productivity. 40 other states have learned that mutual respect between management and employees results in less sick time and lower costs. We save money. But more important than saving money is the principle of love. If we treat our public employees with respect, if we encourage them to get collectively involved in addressing the greatest economic and social crisis our state has faced since the Great Depression, if we open the gates for their ideas, their enthusiasm, their love for this state, I firmly believe this crisis can transfigure itself into a period of great development for all North Carolinians. If we evenly and fairly balance the sacrifices that must be made, we can look back on 2009 as a period of strong leaders, like our president, like these representatives and senators standing behind me, understood that leadership at its core, at its essence, must be about empowering the people to take up the challenges of our time and turn those challenges into opportunity. Now, we'll be back tomorrow in the halls in our annual People of Color Lobbying Day, pressing our 14 points. I was so glad to see Representative Alma Adams here, because I know that the Black Caucus will have a unified front on this matter. It is time for North Carolina to take this last Jim Crow law off its book as fast as possible. And it is the cheapest way to make sure that the shock of possible layoffs and cutbacks is distributed fairly throughout the public workforce. And my dear sister is right who said there are always more people on the ground, everyday folk, that sit in the seats of power. And so it's time for the everyday folk to have this right to collective bargaining.